everything in this panel is equivalent to Maya's panels up here, which you can click and rip off by clicking on this dotted line. So all these commands or their equivalents will be found in Max over here in these panels, and in Blender they will be found up here under these menus which open these panels, or by clicking the letter relating to the first letter of the element. So for example, if I want to do any command related to faces, I press Ctrl F, and all the commands that faces can do will be displayed, or Ctrl E for edges, Ctrl V for vertices. Or you can find the same here: vertex, edge, face, UV, and so on. Now that I have enough geo, I can go into selection. So while in edge selection, for example, if I want to select the loop in Max, I just double click on the loop and it selects itself. If I want to select multiple elements, I hold down Control and select them manually. I've already shown you the marquee selections and the types of selections that are available. While holding down Control, you can also select from one point to another. So if I have this edge selected here and I hold down Control and double click up here, it will select from that point to the other one. If I want to select a ring, I choose my edge and then come here and say ring, and it selects my ring. If I have two edges selected and I press it, it does the same. If I have these edges selected, for example, if I press it, it will just throw a ring around my selection. If I want to select multiple loops, I just double click and hold Control and select another loop. Same goes for if anything is selected. Even if it's like this, if I press loop here, it will select the loop available. That's why I put these buttons on a shortcut. It's really useful. For example, if I just come here and press my shortcut for ring selection. These features also apply to the other modes, of course. So if I go into vertex mode, it's the same. I hold down Control, and if I double click the next vertex, it will create a loop. But I can't select a ring, for example, in vertex mode. Same goes for face. Vertex mode and face actually have this extra feature where if you hold down Shift after clicking face and start dragging around, it will find the shortest path towards that face you're pointing to. And if you click and still keep holding Shift, it will just continue to do the selection. You deselect, by the way, by holding Alt. And now I've deselected everything. In Maya, if I want to select things, for example, I go into edge mode and then I double click an edge, it will select the loop. If I double click an edge across from my edge on the same face, it will select a ring. If I keep holding down Shift, it will select another element, and if I hold down Shift and have something selected, I double click an edge like this, it will select the loop, and I can also select a ring if I just double click the edge from the last edge selected. It keeps in mind whatever I selected the last time, and it's very directional. Now, if I want to deselect, I can keep holding down Shift and deselect with Shift, or I can use Control. This is because while I have a loop selected, for example, and I selected two other edges, I can't deselect with Shift while double clicking to deselect this loop, but I can double click while holding down Control and I deselected the entire loop. Maya also has from point to point selection, so if I have this edge selected, I double click here, it will select until that edge. If I'm in face mode, same things apply. So if I want to select the loop like this, I just have to look towards another face and select it. If I skip one, then it will select from my first face to the last face selected. Same thing applies for the control for deselect. Same thing for vertices. So if I select the next vert, it will select the loop. Same thing with control.
In Blender, you select a loop while alt-clicking an edge, like this, in edge mode. If you select rings by Control-Alt-clicking them, next to them actually, on a face, like this. So I want this ring. I select here, for example. Now, if I already have a ring selected, I can Control-Shift Alt press here and it will select another ring. So I need to hold down Shift, because if by mistake I actually keep holding down Control Alt and select another ring, it will do this. So select loops from my ring selection. In vertex mode, selecting loops functions the same way as in edges, and selecting rings functions the same way as selecting loops in face mode. So just click next to an edge on a face and it will use that edge as a reference for direction on selecting your face loop. So there is no ring selection, of course, in vertex mode, as it would be logical. In face mode, you alt click the edge of a face, just as before, and to path select, as in go from point A to point B, you hold down Control and select your face or element that you're going towards. Same applies for vertex mode or any other mode. And in face mode, you actually have this cool feature where if you hold down Control and Shift and you click face diagonally across from another, let's say from here to here, it will select everything in between those faces. So like this.
If I have a hole in the mesh like this and I want to select the loop, it still works. So I double click and it selected the loop. If I press the ring, it still works, so it doesn't interrupt these processes. Yet, if you're coming from somewhere else, you would expect that it will select the border, but Max has this border sub-object, so you have to go into it and select border and it will select the border. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It only works on holes, as the name suggests. So if you don't want to use the border, you have to manually select the edges around like this. For, let's say, border selection, so if you have a hole, you can double click the edge of the hole and it will select the entire border of the hole. If you want to do this in Blender, so let's say we have a hole here, I delete the faces, I can just hold down Alt as I do with selecting loops, and if I click on the edges, it will select the border of this hole. As I'm shown before in Max, you press 5 or press this element button to select the entire geometry, or just double click while in face mode. If you want to select an element in Maya, or the whole body of geometry, you just double click the entire geometry and it will select it. If you want to select the entire object, you hover over the geometry and press L, that is select link. and this has many nice features. For example, if you have seams that run across, let's say, a patch of your object, it's like this, or you have a patch of sharp edges like this. Whenever you select linked, you can filter your selection by these options. So I can select linked based on seam, and it didn't select this part. And if I want to, I just press L while hovering my mouse over it. And if I want to select the entire thing, when I have this condition, I just press the first option as normal. So it will select everything connected to this body of geometry. Material is self-explanatory, so is sharp. So in this case, the sharp patch I created was not selected. UVs is based on UV islands. Any other selection related options you can find up here in select. Blender has many features that the other two doesn't. So for example, if I press Shift G while something is selected, I can select similar. So if I have the same material or something, I click this one. If I'm in edge mode and I select this edge, for example, and I say select similar, I can say sharpness by sharpness, and now it selected everything by the same sharpness of this edge. You can also do it on this edge, and you will see that everything that has the same angle, I mean sharpness of smoothing, as this edge is selected now. I can also select seams the same way. So Shift G, select similar seam. I selected all my seams, and so on. This panel is well worth exploring. If you want to grow your selection, there's grow and shrink here. So if I grow my selection from this face, it goes like this, and it shrinks like this. If you want to grow a selection in Maya, by default you hold down Shift and press the next or right arrow button, or what's this called, that V tilted on the side, greater or lesser than, and it grows or shrinks your selection. In Blender you grow your selection by choosing face and pressing Ctrl plus, and you shrink it by pressing Ctrl minus. For selecting angles, for example in Max, you have to go to your face selection. Let me just close this, and then you go here and select by angle, and you adjust the angle that you want for your next selection to depend on. So maybe let's say like 22, and everything at an angle of 22 next to the face you click on will be selected. It's quite the same in Maya. If you go to tool settings and selection constraint here and say angle, I leave this at 40 for now. I can just hover my mouse and it will show me what it will select if I click on the face under my mouse. In Blender it's a bit different. It's actually quite helpful because you can go up here to select. After you've selected the face, go to select linked and linked flat faces, and you can interactively choose the angle that will come out of that face and make your selection. And anytime you want to do this, I'll just click repeat now, and it will just repeat the angle that you last set. I usually set a hotkey for this, so let me do it now quickly. Assign shortcut, and I'll press number 5. So now every time I press 5, this comes up, and I also have my little window to adjust the angle as I need to. Now let me explain soft selection. If I go here to the right in Max and press soft selection and I activate use soft selection, I can move everything proportionally right, and I can adjust the shape of the selection, and it will move according to that shape. In Max, you can choose edge distance if you don't like to use this fall off. It's actually necessary sometimes. So in Max, for example, if you have two objects like this, but you have soft selection on, the other one won't be affected. But you can also click this paint icon and then paint your selection wherever and just move it along together, or just select multiple things. So that's about it in Max. In Maya and Blender, it's a bit different. You can actually use soft selection to move other objects as well, depending on the mode here. So now it's on surface, so it's just moving the surface of this mesh. But if I put it on global, it will affect the mesh next to it as well, even if I'm not even inside it. Because in Maya, I can choose two meshes, for example, and modify them however I like at the same time. So even if I turn off soft selection, I can choose these two vertices and move them at the same time. You can't do this in Max unless you attach the object or all the geometry belongs to the same object. But in Maya and Blender, you can. So even if I do this in Blender, I copy and I go into edit mode. I can move these two vertices, enter soft selection. If I press O, and in Blender, it works based on this connected only button. So if it's not on, then I move everything inside this mouse radius, which I enlarge or make smaller with my scroll wheel. And if I choose to connect it only, then I only move the ones actually selected from that body of geometry. There are other options here for shapes, pre-made shapes in Blender, just like Maya does here under curve presets. So based on the shape, you know this. I also modified the colors here. You can change the colors of the fall off for Maya. Now, selection in Maya, for example, is done through the object. So if I do this and you can't see through the object, it will select whatever is behind it. And to turn that off, I have to come here to common selection options and tick automatic camera based selection. So now if I drag for this selection of vertex, then I didn't select the vertices behind the object. Or if you're in wireframe mode, then this doesn't matter, but usually you can leave this on for default, and if you want to select through it, just go into wireframe mode. It's the same for Blender by default. So if I do this and make a selection, it will not go through it. But if I'm in wireframe mode, then I can select through the object. In Max, it's the same as in Maya. So if I drag and select, I select through the object. If I don't want it to do that, I have to click this optional culling. So I call the back faces. So it only selects through like this. For some reason, it selected this Ngon. Maybe because of the shading. So if I do this, I only select what I'm looking at. And occluded is kind of the same. If you're in wireframe mode, these don't work. So it works exactly like Blender or Maya does. Continuing with selection, I want to introduce how to select every other edge, for example, which you can do in Max. For example, if I press this ring here, it selects the ring, right? But I can select every other edge like this manually, or I can go up here and press dot ring, and it will select every other edge. I can also add a distance for the dot gap here. So for example, if I set 2, it will skip 2 edges and select the next one, like this. This is a great feature of Max. You can do the same for loops, as in dot loop. I just reduce this back. So here I have a complete loop, almost a complete loop. And if I choose this and press dot loop, it will select every other edge from within that loop. In Blender, we have something called checker select. So if I have a ring selected like this, I go to checker deselect up here, then it deselects every other loop. I can, just as the same in Max, select the distance of the deselection from within the ring, and even offset my selection and change it afterwards. Same goes for looping, it doesn't discriminate in that way. So we have the same tool. In Maya, you can only do this via script. It's not included by default, yet it is present in the software. So I found these 4 lines of code on this forum. So I just copy the script here and go back to Maya, paste it into this little window down at the bottom and press enter. And this will select every other edge for me. So you normally need a script for this in Maya. Sadly, that's all. But you can create your own buttons here and install script, so that's fine. So let's say we have the example that we have Ngons in this mesh. So I will create some right now in Blender. If you want to delete something, you select the element and either press X or delete. It will bring up this window and you select what and how you want to delete that thing. So in my case, I want to dissolve vertices, and I can also press Control Delete just like in Autodesk Product, and the same thing will happen. Same thing for any element. So now if I go and select this edge, Control Delete will dissolve the edge. I can also do the same for faces. So if I Control Delete the faces here, it will dissolve any vertex that is within the perimeter of the faces to form this Ngon. Now to select Ngons, I have to go up here and go select all by trait. And now I will choose faces by sides. Now it says number of faces 4, so it selected all my quads. If I want to select triangles, I will just choose 3, and I can choose any number of sides to select specific faces, but in case of Ngons, I just want to select everything that has more than 4 sides, so I'll just change the type from equal to greater than 4. So now I've selected all Ngons in my mesh if I need to verify and clean things up. In Max, if I want to do the same thing, there is a cool tool up here in the ribbon menu. But let me just create Ngons first here as well. So Control Delete after selecting this vertex, and Control Delete after selecting this edge, and so on. If I Control Delete, let me just turn off selection by angle. If I Control Delete here, it doesn't do anything as opposed to Blender. So now I have a few Ngons, and I'll go up here and just click non-quads. So now it's selected all my non-quads. It will also select triangles, by the way. So let's say I have a triangle like this, and I go and say non-quads. It also selected my triangle. But there is also a way to select by sides as in Blender. So up here, I can say greater than 4 sides and click the mouse button and it will select all my Ngons. In Maya, let me just create some Ngons for the same example. So in Maya, if you have faces selected and you press Control Backspace or Control Delete, it will actually just delete the faces instead. So let me just turn this angle off and I'll select this edge and Control Delete or Control Backspace does the same thing, just like in Max. And I'll select this word here and do the same. Same for these. So now I have a few Ngons, and in Maya, if I want to select Ngons, I go up here to Mesh and Clean Up. I press this little window because this is a tool for detecting many other problems. I have to select, first and foremost, select matching polygons and not clean up matching polygons because this can create more problems than it could solve. So first I have select matching polygons and then I say non-manifold geometry, apply. And then it selects all my Ngons. I can close this and do whatever I want with these faces. Maybe these are super small and I can't see them and I just move them around to detect them. So that's what selecting Ngons is for anyway, but you already know this.